Let's look at Adelaide. The lockdown's begun. No new cases today.
No new cases. Before the lockdown, they'd got to no new cases. So I know the South Australians and the federal government are aware that they're talking about this more virulent strain. You'd think it would have spread a bit more if it was a more virulent strain, but it's called a so-called UK strain. But just a massive difference between the way South Australia has handled this compared to New South Wales, given the small amount of numbers of cases at this point. And Scott Morrison asked about this. He supported the Liberal Premier Stephen Marshall, and he knows how popular this kind of policy is in terms of lockdowns or borders shutting or whatever. He made the point that New South Wales have pushed through this, which they have. They've had 21 cases in one day a few times over July and August and kept open, whereas this is 22 cases in 3 days in South Australia. But it's proof, really, that South Australia isn't as prepared as New South Wales. There aren't the QR codes in venues, etc. Scott Morrison pointing out the difference but supporting South Australia this morning.
New South Wales has always pushed through. I mean, South Australia is a smaller economy than New South Wales, I should stress as well. I mean, the implications in New South Wales, if they were to go down similar paths, would have a far greater impact on the national economy. But for South Australians, hang in there, tough it out over the next few days. I know the Premier would not have done this lightly.
Now, what Scott Morrison knows and Stephen Marshall knows is there's no political risk for Marshall because the greater populace, they want hard measures on coronavirus. They don't want any coronavirus. So there's no political risk in terms of locking down. If you wait a few days and it gets out of control, that's where your political risk is. I think that's a very fair assessment. We've seen Mark McGowan go so hardline on this. Have a look at this. This is an advertisement for a candidate ahead of the March election. It doesn't say vote Labor. It says the candidate for Mark McGowan. The guy's got rock star status over there because he's shut the borders to everyone. So West Australians don't have to see anyone from any other state. It's quite extraordinary, the popularity levels. His popularity levels are the highest, and we saw the result from the Queensland election, something like 52, 53% two-party preferred vote to Anastasia Palaszczuk on a hard border policy and not many other promises or issues. Let's have a look at the unemployment map with the unemployment figures out today, a small uptick to 7%. Just want to have a look at the various states. You'll see that the states with open borders like New South Wales, the Northern Territory, apart from this latest change in terms of Adelaide, have the lowest unemployment figures. Queensland the highest, 7.7. WA beg to differ, they've got 6.6. And Tasmania 8%. Warren Hogan, the economist who often comes on Afternoon Agenda, saying maybe there will be a bit of a snapback here. But again, important to point out that there's a lot more people on the job seeker entitlement than those figures suggest. There's twice as many as were earlier in the year. If you take up part-time employment, you're not on those figures. There's also high underemployment figures, for example. But I think it shows with Queensland, again, you know, the border closures there have hurt them in terms of unemployment. People caring more about health than they are about unemployment at the moment. And Scott Morrison knows that as well, Kieran.